Environmental racism. What is environmental racism? Environmental racism is defined as, quote, a type of systemic racism that occurs when communities of color are disproportionately exposed to environmental hazards, end quote. What I will be exploring within Project 2 is an anti-environmental racism in California, specifically in the San Joaquin Valley and Stockton. Within this video, we will be exploring how environmental racism affects Latino farm workers in the San Joaquin Valley and residents of Stockton who are people of color. All of the examples of environmental discrimination that I will be talking about within this video are straight from Magali Flores Núñez's article, Environmental Racism and Latino Farm Worker Health in the San Joaquin Valley, California. This will be all linked in the description below. For this specific topic, I have chosen two great stakeholders that I feel best represent how we can combat the issue at hand. My stakeholders include the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and RISE Stockton. The audience that I intend and hope to reach within this video are residents of California. This is because I want to educate and offer insight to the people of California who may not be aware of these issues by explaining how people are being environmentally discriminated against where we live and what we can do to make a change. I hope that this project will serve as a way to spread awareness and help enlighten people on environmental racism, as well as offer different ways to help fight against and prevent racism. The thesis statement of the topic of anti-environmental racism will be, what I will be exploring within Project 2 is anti-environmental racism in the San Joaquin Valley, California, and Stockton, California. In the San Joaquin Valley, we will be seeing how Latino farm workers and residents who are people of color have been affected by environmental discrimination. In Stockton, we will be seeing how residents who are people of color are forced into hazardous living areas, putting their lives and health at risk. These two stakeholders that will be included are organizations that aim to assist the San Joaquin Valley and Stockton in their fight against environmental discrimination. These stakeholders include the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and RISE Stockton. The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment addresses environmental pollution issues in California, fighting to rid our resources of pollutants, which in turn supports those directly affected by environmental discrimination. RISE Stockton addresses the more racial aspects of this issue, making a point about how individuals' lives are directly affected by living in discriminatory areas that force them to face contaminants. The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and RISE Stockton are both extremely important stakeholders in California. This is because Latino farm workers in the San Joaquin Valley are heavily mistreated by living off of contaminated water, and colored communities in Stockton are situated in areas that are catacombs for pollution. As we all know, farmers play a vital role in our environment and our everyday lives. Magali Flores Núñez explains that Latinos make up 88% of the San Joaquin Valley farm workers and are, quote, home to some of the highest concentrations of environmental toxins in the state, including some of the worst water contaminated scores in the United States, end quote. From this, we can see that despite being vital contributors to the people, Latino farm workers' health is not a concern, as they are not even provided necessities, like fresh drinking water. Outside of the San Joaquin Valley, Magali Flores Núñez also informs us about the city part of Stockton. Many communities of color and poverty reside in Stockton, and because of Stockton's loose restrictions, their living areas are taken over by factories, which causes Stockton to have, quote, one of the highest levels of toxic air issues, which were created by design to keep factories and other pollutants situated in communities of color." End quote. From these two situations, we can see the bigger picture. Farm workers are not being given clean water to drink, and communities of color in Stockton are breathing in polluted air. All of these pose huge health risks to these individuals. This poses the question, who is going to do something about this, and what are they going to do? The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. The people of the OEHHA make it their life mission to identify and eliminate environmental pollution hazards in California. This means that they would not stand for the injustice that Latino farm workers in the San Joaquin Valley do not have access to safe drinking water. How does this organization support the introduction? The OEHHA supports the introduction and thesis because not only is it a California-based organization, but it also makes it its mission to combat environmental issues. This includes water hazards, which was an issue faced by Latino farm workers, not being able to receive clean drinking water. The OEHHA works alongside the Safe Water Drinking Act and Proposition 65. This helps educate Californians and find what contaminants are in our drinking water and how we can make it safe to drink. By bringing to light injustices like the example with Latino farm workers, organizations like the OEHHA are capable and willing to help better the environment by cleaning air, water, and soil contaminants, and in turn, better the lives of those whose health is being put at risk. The video provided is a short intro to who they are and what they are fighting for.
We're scientists at the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment.
We explore the health effects and dangers of hazardous chemicals.
Our mission is to protect the health of Californians
and our state's environment.
Rise Stockton. The issue of colored communities facing environmental discrimination in Stockton is a clear problem that Rise Stockton has taken responsibility to help those affected not only by discrimination, but hazardous pollutants in their living areas. How does Rise Stockton add to our understanding of environmental racism in Stockton? Rise Stockton, as the name suggests, is all about helping those in Stockton who are in need rise above the situation they are in. Instead of sugarcoating the problem, organizations within Rise Stockton, like the Natural Resource Defense Council, openly acknowledge that there is environmental racial injustice within the colored communities that face polluted living environments. They work one-on-one, helping discriminated citizens in need, while also calling out those in power who knowingly allow such injustices to continue and take place. Rise Stockton is a large group of many different organizations with the same goal in mind, bringing environmental justice to Stockton. But what is environmental injustice? One of Rise Stockton's organizations, the NRDC, or Natural Resource Defense Council, will help explain.
Environmental justice really reflects the fundamental reality that vulnerable communities are all too often subject to the disproportionate burden of pollution and contamination. At the end of the day, when we're talking about environmental impacts, at the heart of it are real people's lives. And if you think about one child who's in her home that maybe has lead paint on the walls, she's drinking water from the tap that might have lead contamination in it. She plays in a playground that has arsenic in the soil and is developing asthma because of the polluting facilities next door. She goes into her school that has mold inside. These are real things that happen on an everyday basis.
Thanks to the NRDC, we will be able to understand that environmental injustice is when people reside in areas that are sadly subject to pollution, posing health risks. What can we do to combat environmental justice? The NRDC will also provide a few examples.
There are things like litigation. That means continue fighting in the courts, continue fighting to strengthen existing legislation, fighting to ensure that existing legislation is actually being enforced. Things like community organizing, public education, mobilizing the base, and elevating voices. There's also things like using media as an outlet to get your point across.
Within this video, we have come to understand the idea of environmental racism. Environmental racism is, again, a type of systemic racism that occurs when communities of color are disproportionately exposed to environmental hazards. With the examples given in Magali Flores Núñez's article, Environmental Racism and Latino Farmworker Health in the San Joaquin Valley, California, we discussed and learned about the farmworkers who do not receive clean water in the San Joaquin Valley. We also discussed how colored communities in Stockton are forced to live in polluted areas. The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment and RISE Stockton are both amazing examples of communities that represent anti-environmental racism. The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment provides an example of those who fight to cleanse our environment of pollutants that inadvertently help those facing discrimination. RISE Stockton provides an example of those who directly stand up for those in need and those who are suffering, living in heavily polluted areas. I hope after watching this video, you learned something new and help in the battle against environmental racism. Thank you for listening.